The entire boardroom erupted in laughter when the CEO humiliated and fired me right in the middle of the board meeting. They didn't know that in exactly 10 minutes, they'd be begging me for mercy. But it was already too late. 14 years of building this company together. And he chose to destroy me in front of everyone. He just didn't realize I held the keys to everything. And I was about to use them. My name is Victoria Carter. And at 42, I was the CTO of Ironbridge Dynamics. Or at least I was until 5 minutes ago. The mahogany conference table reflected the sneering faces of 12 board members as Gregory Shaw, my co-founder and CEO, delivered his final blow. "Victoria," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "You've become a relic. Your outdated methods are holding us back. Tyler here." He gestured to the smirking 28-year-old beside him. "Represents the future of our technology division." The board members chuckled, some more uncomfortable than others, but none spoke up. These were the same people who'd praised my innovations just months ago. Now they avoided my eyes like cowards. 14 years, Gregory, I said quietly, my hands steady despite the rage building inside me. We built this company from nothing. Exactly, he interrupted, standing to emphasize his power. From nothing. And that's where your contributions end. You're stuck in the startup mentality while we've evolved into a billion-dollar corporation. Your security protocols are paranoid, your coding standards are rigid, and frankly, Victoria, you've become dead weight. Dead weight. The words hung in the air like poison. This from the man who couldn't write a line of code if his life depended on it. The man who'd taken credit for every breakthrough I'd engineered, every crisis I'd solved, every system I'd built with my own hands. Tyler Grant leaned forward, his fresh MBA practically glowing on his forehead. I've already identified 17 inefficiencies in your department. Victoria, we'll have everything streamlined within the month. 17 inefficiencies. This child who'd been here 6 weeks thought he understood systems I'd spent over a decade perfecting. The board members nodded approvingly, already calculating the cost savings of replacing a senior CTO with a junior yes-man. Your severance package is generous, Gregory continued, sliding a folder across the table. 2 months' pay, continued health insurance through the quarter, more than fair, considering your recent underperformance. I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I stood slowly, removing my company badge and laptop from my bag. The room fell silent, perhaps expecting tears or pleas. They'd miscalculated. Gregory, I said, placing both items carefully on the table. I suggest you explain to our investors why the entire system will shut down in 10 minutes. His smirk faltered. What are you talking about? 10 minutes, I repeated, checking my watch. That's when the monthly security validation expires. You know, one of those paranoid protocols you just mentioned. That's sabotage, Tyler sputtered. We'll sue? Sabotage? I laughed. A cold sound that made several board members shift uncomfortably. It's a standard security measure I implemented 3 years ago. Fully documented, board approved, and completely legal. The CTO must personally validate system integrity every 30 days. Since I'm no longer the CTO as of... I glanced at my watch again. 7 minutes ago. I'm afraid I can't help you. Gregory's face had gone pale. Victoria, let's discuss this. There's nothing to discuss. You've made your position clear. I'm outdated, dead weight, a burden to progress. I picked up my purse, savoring the dawning horror on their faces. I'm sure Tyler can figure it out. After all, he found 17 inefficiencies. What's one more? The boardroom erupted as I reached the door. Voices raised, phones appeared, panic spreading like wildfire. Gregory shouted my name, but I didn't turn back. 9 minutes, I called over my shoulder. Better hurry. The elevator doors closed on chaos. And for the first time in months, I smiled. They thought they knew the value of what they were throwing away. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. The elevator descended through 14 floors of the building I'd helped design, each level a reminder of what Gregory and I had built together. and how thoroughly he'd betrayed that partnership. It hadn't always been this way. In 2011, we were just two dreamers in a garage, Gregory with his business connections and me with my coding skills. I remember the nights we survived on instant ramen and pure determination, debugging code until sunrise. He'd joke that I was the brain and he was the mouth, selling my innovations to skeptical investors who couldn't see past our cramped workspace. Those early days forged what I thought was an unbreakable bond. When our first major client threatened to pull out over a security breach, I worked 96 hours straight to patch the vulnerability and implement a new encryption protocol. Gregory brought me coffee every few hours, sitting beside me in solidarity even though he couldn't help with the technical aspects. "We're partners," he'd said then. "Your wins are mine are yours." How naive I'd been to believe him. The shift began subtly after our Series B funding in 2018. Gregory started wearing expensive suits, attending elite business clubs, surrounding himself with consultants who whispered about optics and leadership presence. During board presentations, he began interrupting my technical explanations, summarizing my work in ways that made it sound like his vision rather than my execution. "Let me translate what Victoria means," became his favorite phrase, as if my clear explanations needed his interpretation. The board ate it up, seeing him as the visionary leader who could bridge the technical and business worlds. By 2020, the betrayals became more concrete. The compensation committee, which Gregory had carefully stacked with his allies, decided my equity package was excessive for a technical role. They restructured it, giving Gregory increased control while diminishing my stake in the company I'd built with my own hands. When I protested, he took me aside with that practiced look of concern. "Victoria, you have to understand the optics. The investors need to see clear leadership. Don't worry, I'll always take care of you. Take care of me." Like I was a pet or a charity case rather than the person who'd architected every system that made our company valuable. The technical team erosion followed, one by one. Gregory placed his people in key positions. Young MBAs with impressive resumes, but no real understanding of our infrastructure. They'd present my ideas as their own in meetings, and Gregory would praise their fresh thinking while I sat there, watching my innovations get repackaged and credited to others. 6 months ago, he crossed the final line. A patent application for our core customer routing algorithm, technology I developed, refined, and documented, was filed with Gregory listed as lead inventor. My name appeared as a contributor, buried among 5 others who'd never touched the code. "It's just paperwork," he'd said when I confronted him. "You know you're the real genius here, but the board responds better to CEO-led innovations. It's all about perception." Perception? The word that justified every betrayal, every stolen credit, every diminishment of my contributions. I'd started planning my exit then, but Gregory moved faster. Tyler Grant appeared like a vulture, young and hungry and willing to parrot whatever Gregory wanted to hear. I watched them have lunches, saw Tyler presenting analyses of my department that reeked of Gregory's coaching. The writing was on the wall. But I'd foolishly believed 14 years of partnership meant something. Now, standing in the lobby of the building I'd helped create, I understood the truth. To Gregory, I'd never been a partner. I was a resource to be exploited, a talent to be mined until depleted, then discarded for a newer model. But Gregory had made one crucial mistake. He'd been so focused on the business side, so confident in his schemes, that he'd never truly understood the technical foundation of his empire. He was about to learn that some things couldn't be stolen, repackaged, or replaced. Some things required the person who'd built them. And in about 6 minutes, he'd understand exactly what he'd thrown away. 3 years ago, after the first major betrayal with my equity restructuring, I'd learned to protect myself. Trust was a luxury I could no longer afford, especially with Gregory. So I built a failsafe into the very heart of Ironbridge's infrastructure, not out of malice, but out of prudent necessity. The Prometheus Protocol, as I'd named it in the documentation, was sold to the board as an advanced security measure against cyber threats. In an age of increasing ransomware attacks and data breaches, They'd eagerly approved my proposal for a dead man's switch system that required monthly validation from the highest technical authority, the CTO. What they didn't fully grasp, lost in the technical specifications I deliberately made dense, was that this wasn't just a simple password reset. The validation process required biometric confirmation, knowledge of rotating algorithmic keys that I'd memorized, and access to a secure partition that could only be reached through my personal credentials. Without monthly revalidation, the system would interpret it as a catastrophic security breach and lock down everything, every server, every database, every customer-facing application. I'd built it into the kernel level of our operating system, woven so deeply into our infrastructure that removing it would require rebuilding everything from scratch. It would take a team of experts months just to understand how it worked, let alone disable it. And I'd made sure the documentation, while technically complete, was scattered across different repositories, written in my personal coding style that Tyler and his MBA crowd wouldn't be able to decipher quickly. The beauty of the system was its legitimacy. Everything was above board, approved through proper channels, with a clear business justification. I'd even presented it as protecting the company from scenarios where a CTO might be compromised or incapacitated. The board had praised my foresight. "Excellent thinking, Victoria," Gregory had said in that meeting, barely looking up from his phone. "Whatever you think is best for security." He'd never bothered to understand the details. Technical matters were beneath him, after all. That was my domain. Until it wasn't. The monthly validation was scheduled for today at 2:47 p.m., precisely. I'd chosen odd times deliberately. A security best practice to avoid predictable patterns. As CTO, I'd never missed a validation, often completing it hours or even days early. But today, I'd waited until the last possible moment. Gregory's theatrical firing had occurred at 2:35 p.m. Perfect timing, really. He'd unknowingly given me exactly what I needed. A clear witness termination that absolved me of any responsibility for what happened next. My phone buzzed with increasingly frantic messages as I walked through the lobby. The security team would be noticing the warnings now. 5 minutes until automatic lockdown. 4 minutes to understand what was happening. 3 minutes to realize they couldn't stop it. 2 minutes to trace it back to the Prometheus protocol. 1 minute to understand that only I could prevent it. And 0 minutes to do anything about it. I'd included override procedures. Of course, I wasn't irresponsible, but those procedures required the CTO's active participation, and I was no longer the CTO. Tyler Grant was, apparently. Let him figure out how to validate a system he'd never bothered to understand, using biometric data he didn't possess, with knowledge he'd never acquired. The failsafe wasn't meant as revenge, it was meant as protection. Protection against exactly this scenario, being forced out by someone who didn't understand the technical complexities of what they were taking over. The fact that it would cause chaos wasn't a bug, it was a feature. As I pushed through the building's revolving doors into the afternoon sun, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Gregory thought he was replacing an outdated CTO with a younger, cheaper model. Instead, he'd just pulled the cornerstone out of his own foundation. The countdown on my phone reached 0. Somewhere above me, 14 floors up, Ironbridge Dynamics was about to learn why you don't discard the architect while you're still living in their house. My phone exploded with notifications before I'd even reached my car. 17 missed calls in 30 seconds. A new record. I silenced it and drove calmly toward downtown, watching in my rearview mirror as people began streaming out of the Ironbridge building. The first coherent voicemail came from David, my former head of infrastructure. "Victoria, the entire system just went dark. Everything. Email, customer portals, internal tools. It's all locked behind Prometheus. Please, we need you." The second was from Tyler, panic cracking his confident facade. "There must be override codes. You can't just, this is illegal. We'll sue you into oblivion." The third was Gregory, his CEO voice barely maintaining control. "Victoria, there's been a misunderstanding. Return immediately. We need to discuss your transition period." Transition period, even in crisis, He couldn't admit he needed me. By the time I parked at my favorite coffee shop, the calls had escalated, members of the board, the legal team, even competitors fishing for information. I ordered a cappuccino and opened my laptop to watch the beautiful chaos unfold. Our company Slack, now accessible only through my personal cached session, painted a vivid picture. The sales team was in meltdown. They'd been in the middle of finalizing a $20 million contract with Hexagon Industries. The demo systems had died mid-presentation. Client data was inaccessible. The portal showing our real-time analytics, the one feature that set us apart from competitors, displayed nothing but error messages. The IT department's channel was pure pandemonium. They'd tried everything: system restores, backup servers, emergency protocols. But I designed Prometheus to be thorough. It didn't just lock the front door, it sealed every window, vent, and crack. Even the backup systems required validation. Who the hell approved this? Someone typed in all caps. The irony was delicious. They'd all approved it. They'd just never bothered to understand what they were approving. My phone rang again. This time, it was Jennifer Walsh, the board chair. I'd always respected Jennifer. She was one of the few who'd acknowledged my contributions. I answered. "Victoria," she said without preamble. "What do you need?" "I need nothing," I replied calmly. "I'm no longer an employee of Ironbridge Dynamics. Gregory made that very clear. Cut the crap. The company is hemorrhaging. We've got reporters calling. Stock price is dropping. What do you want?" "Jennifer, I want you to understand something. For 14 years, I've been telling you and the board that our technical infrastructure was critical, that it needed respect, investment, and most importantly, competent leadership. You all nodded and smiled and then let Gregory slowly dismantle my team while promoting people like Tyler Grant." A pause. "This is about Tyler. This is about competence. Tyler claimed he found 17 inefficiencies in my department. Tell me, Jennifer, which of those inefficiencies included understanding the systems he was supposedly going to optimize?" I heard muffled conversation in the background. Multiple voices, all urgent. "Victoria, we can discuss restructuring." "No," I interrupted. "You can discuss restructuring with Tyler. After all, he's your new CTO. I'm sure his fresh perspective and innovative thinking will solve this minor technical hiccup." "You know he can't." She caught herself. "The board would like to meet with you." The board had their chance. They laughed when Gregory called me dead weight. Where was this concern then? More muffled voices. Someone was shouting about customer complaints flooding in. Another voice mentioned possible SEC violations if they couldn't access financial records. "Victoria," Jennifer's voice turned hard. "You're destroying a company you helped build." "No," I corrected her. "I built the company. Gregory destroyed it the moment he decided I was expendable. I'm just allowing natural consequences to occur." Through the coffee shop window, I watched news vans pulling up to the Ironbridge building. The tech blogs would be having a field day. Ironbridge Dynamics, the rising star of enterprise software, brought to its knees by what they'd probably call a technical glitch. If only they knew the glitch had a name, and it was sitting in a coffee shop, enjoying the best cappuccino of her life. 2 hours into the crisis, Gregory finally swallowed his pride enough to beg for a face-to-face meeting. He suggested our old coffee spot, Antonio's, where we'd sketched our first business plan on napkins all those years ago. The sentimentality was so transparent it was almost insulting. I arrived to find not just Gregory, but Tyler Grant and Martin Kerr, Ironbridge's chief legal counsel. A power play disguised as nostalgia. How perfectly, Gregory. "Victoria." Gregory stood as I approached, his usual commanding presence diminished. His tie was loosened, hair disheveled. Good. "Thank you for coming." I sat without acknowledging his greeting, noting Tyler's barely concealed hostility and Martin's calculating gaze. "Let's skip the pleasantries," I said. "You have 10 minutes, starting now." Martin jumped in immediately. "Ms. Carter, what you've done constitutes corporate sabotage. We have grounds for criminal charges. No, you don't, I interrupted. The Prometheus Protocol is a documented, board-approved security measure. I followed every procedure to the letter. The fact that you terminated the only person capable of maintaining it shows negligence on your part, not mine. Tyler leaned forward aggressively. You deliberately timed this. I validated the system every month at 2:47 p.m. I cut him off. Check the logs. 3 years of consistent validation at that exact time. Today was no different, except I was terminated at 2:35. Would you prefer I had violated company security policy by sharing access credentials while still employed? Gregory raised a hand to silence them both. Victoria, please. Let's find a solution. What do you want? Your job back? A consulting contract? Name your price. I smiled. A consulting contract? Like the one you gave Brad Phillips last year? 20 hours a week at half my regular rate to transition knowledge. I think not. Then what? Desperation crept into his voice. We're losing millions by the hour. The Hexagon deal is dead. 3 more major clients are threatening to invoke their SLA penalties. What I want, I said slowly, is for you to understand the magnitude of your mistake. But since that seems unlikely, I'll settle for something more practical. I pulled out a single sheet of paper from my bag. This is my new employment contract with Virion Solutions. I start Monday as their Chief Technology Officer. Salary, double what you paid me. Equity, 15%. Fully vested. And most interestingly, they've just acquired something that should concern you. Gregory's face went pale as he read. Tyler snatched the paper, his expression morphing from confusion to horror. The customer routing algorithm, Tyler whispered. That's our core technology. No, I corrected. It's my technology. My name is on the patent as sole inventor. Despite Gregory's attempts to dilute that, I filed the original provisional patent before joining Ironbridge, which means it was never work for hire. Your lawyers should have caught that, but they were too busy restructuring my equity to notice. Martin was frantically scrolling through his phone, presumably checking patent databases. His face confirmed what I already knew. Virion will license it back to you, I continued casually. For 60% of all revenue generated using the algorithm. That's what? Roughly 80% of your total revenue? Quite generous, really. They wanted 75. You can't do this. Gregory's voice was barely above a whisper. We built this together. We did. I agreed. And then you decided to build your future without me. Tyler here was going to streamline everything, remember? Fix all 17 of my inefficiencies? Well, here's your chance. Of course, first you'll need to get your systems back online. Then you'll need to completely rebuild your infrastructure without violating my patents. Should only take, 18 to 24 months. Tyler's hands were shaking. The board will never approve those licensing fees. Then you'll cease operations. I shrugged. Virion is prepared for either outcome. We've already reached out to your top clients with better offers. The silence stretched between us. 3 men who'd thought they held all the power, facing the woman they'd dismissed as obsolete. There must be another way, Gregory finally said. I let Gregory's desperate words hang in the air before sliding the licensing agreement across the table. The 30-page document landed with a weight that made all 3 men flinch. Another way, I repeated. You had another way. It was called treating your CTO with respect. That option expired at 2:35 p.m. today. Martin flipped through the agreement with increasing panic. These terms are unconscionable. 60% of revenue, plus restrictions on modifying the algorithm, plus mandatory attribution in all marketing materials, plus immediate payment of 18 months of back licensing fees, I added helpfully. My lawyer calculated that based on your SEC filings, it comes to approximately $47 million. Tyler laughed, a hysterical edge to it. This is insane. No company would agree to this. Then don't, I said simply. Shut down operations. Declare bankruptcy. Watch your investors lose everything. Watch your employees, the ones who've been working 60-hour weeks to build your dreams, lose their jobs. Your choice. Gregory's mask finally cracked completely. Victoria, please. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? I stood, my calm finally breaking. You systematically undermined me for years. You stole credit for my work. You redistributed my equity. You filed patents claiming my innovations as yours. You brought in this child. I gestured at Tyler. To replace me without even having the decency to warn me. Those aren't mistakes, Gregory. Those are choices. We can negotiate. No. I pulled out my phone, showing them an email thread. See this? It's from your biggest competitor, Stratosphere Systems. They're offering to acquire Ironbridge's client list when you go under. I've already provided them with a detailed analysis of your vulnerabilities, all public information. Of course, they're particularly interested in the Hexagon account. The blood drained from Gregory's face. Losing Hexagon to Stratosphere would trigger a cascade of client defections. But here's the truly beautiful part, I continued. Even if you somehow get the systems back online, which you won't without me, you still need my algorithm to function. Every routing decision, every optimization, every client-facing feature that makes Ironbridge special, that's my code, my patent, my property. Martin cleared his throat. If we agree to the licensing terms— Oh, that ship has sailed too, I interrupted. That was the offer 5 minutes ago. Now, I pulled out a second document. Now Virion wants acquisition rights. If Ironbridge's valuation drops below $200 million, which should happen by market close tomorrow, Virion gets first option to buy. At a 20% discount. Tyler slammed his fist on the table. You're destroying everything. No, I said quietly. I'm collecting what I'm owed. 14 years of innovation, dedication, and loyalty. You can't put a price on that. But 60% of revenue seems like a good start. Gregory looked broken. The master manipulator who'd played people like chess pieces for years, finally in checkmate. How do we even know you'll honor the agreement? He asked weakly. How do we know you won't just take the money and still let us burn? I smiled coldly. You don't. You'll have to trust me. Ironic, isn't it? After all your talk about trust and partnership and family, now you need to rely on the woman you called dead weight. I gathered my papers, leaving only the licensing agreement on the table. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to sign. After that, Virion withdraws all offers and we proceed with aggressive competition. Your clients are already nervous. Your stock is plummeting. Your board is in emergency session. How long do you think Ironbridge survives without its core technology? Victoria. Gregory's voice cracked. I'm sorry. No, I said, pausing at the door. You're not sorry. You're scared. There's a difference. Sorry would have been treating me as an equal. Sorry would have been recognizing my contributions. Sorry would have been not trying to replace me with someone who can't even understand the systems I built. I looked at Tyler one last time. Good luck with those 17 inefficiencies. I'm sure your fresh perspective will revolutionize whatever's left of the company. The door closed on 3 shattered men and a dying company, built on brilliance they'd tried to steal and destroyed by the arrogance of believing they could. 6 weeks. That's all it took for Ironbridge Dynamics to collapse completely. Gregory signed the licensing agreement at 8:47 a.m. the next morning, 13 minutes before the deadline. But the damage was irreversible. The Prometheus lockdown had lasted 18 hours, long enough for 3 major clients to invoke breach of contract clauses, for the stock to lose 60% of its value, and for our best engineers to update their LinkedIn profiles. The $47 million in back licensing fees drained their cash reserves. The 60% revenue share made profitability impossible. Within 2 weeks, they'd missed payroll. Within 4, creditors were circling. Within 6, bankruptcy filing. Tyler Grant lasted exactly 9 days as CTO. Unable to understand even basic system architecture, he'd made a critical error trying to patch the customer database. corrupting 3 years of transaction history. The board fired him immediately, but the damage was done. He was last seen working as a junior analyst at a startup in Denver, his revolutionary ideas notably absent from his much humbler resume. Gregory fought until the end, trying every angle, calling in every favor. But you can't negotiate with mathematics. You can't charm your way out of technical incompetence. You can't leadership speak your way past fundamental system failures. The bankruptcy auction was swift and merciless. Virion Solutions acquired Ironbridge's remaining assets for $32 million, a fraction of its former billion-dollar valuation. I stood in the back of the courtroom as the judge approved the sale, watching Gregory sign away his empire with shaking hands. He found me afterward in the parking lot, a shadow of the commanding CEO who'd humiliated me just weeks before. "I hope you're satisfied," he said, his voice hollow. Satisfied. I considered the word. No, Gregory. Satisfied would have been building something great together. This is just business. You taught me that. I lost everything. You lost what you stole, I corrected. There's a difference. My first day at Virion, I implemented a new policy. Every innovation would be properly attributed, every contribution recognized. Every team member valued not just for their title or politics, but for their actual work. The engineers who'd fled Ironbridge's sinking ship found homes in my department, bringing their expertise and, more importantly, their loyalty earned through respect. Within 3 months, we'd absorbed most of Ironbridge's client base. Within 6, we'd doubled our valuation. The board gave me full autonomy. Having learned from Ironbridge's very public mistake what happens when you undervalue technical leadership. I kept one memento from Ironbridge in my new office, a printout of the email Gregory had sent announcing my termination to the all-staff list. Victoria Carter's outdated methods no longer align with our innovative future. It read, I framed it as a daily reminder that hubris is the ultimate vulnerability in any system. Sometimes late at night while reviewing code. I wondered if I'd gone too far, if destruction was worse than betrayal. Then I'd remember 14 years of diminishment, of stolen credit, of being told I was worthless by someone who couldn't function without me. No, I hadn't gone too far. I'd gone exactly as far as necessary. The last time I saw Gregory, he was leaving a job interview at a mid-tier consulting firm. His shoulders were slumped, his designer suit replaced by off-the-rack mediocrity. He saw me, started to approach, then stopped. What was there to say? He'd learned the hard way what I'd tried to tell him for years. Some people you can't afford to lose. Some bridges, once burned, take everything else with them. As I walked into my building, one where my name was on the door and my value was never questioned, I left him with one final truth. Gregory, remember this. There are mistakes you only get to make once. Thank you for listening to this story of betrayal and justice served cold. Where are you tuning in from today? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share what you think. Have you ever witnessed karma catch up with someone who deserved it? Let's discuss.